Can you refer me to any good salespeople in your network? This is a question that business leaders ask all the time. And I get why they ask it. It sounds efficient. It sounds practical. It sounds like a shortcut to growth. The thinking goes something like this. If I can just get someone proven from the industry, someone who knows the acronyms, the players, the objections, and the customers, then they can hit the ground running. And they can solve my problem quickly. Sounds great, right? And sometimes that can work, but most of the time, it's not a sustainable way to build a strong sales team. Because what often sits underneath that question is not really a hiring strategy. It's urgency. It's wishful thinking. It's hoping that there's this ready-made answer walking around in the market who can come in and save the day. All of our problems will be solved once we get this unicorn. So in today's episode of Lead to Grow, I want to unpack what people often get wrong when hiring salespeople, why the experienced industry person is not always the asset they appear to be. And then I want to walk you through what you should do instead if you're looking to build a sales team properly. The idea that a salesperson is just going to bring a whole heap of customers with them is often overstated. It only really works in situations where the service is mostly the person. So if the service is highly personal and relationship-led, and the customer is primarily attached to that individual, then yes, movement can happen. Think of like a physiotherapist or a psychologist, maybe a finance broker in some contexts, where the product is broadly similar everywhere and the person is just a huge part of the value. But when the customer is buying from a business with a broader offer, systems, delivery, capability, brand, pricing structure, and service model, it's far less likely that customers will just blindly follow the salesperson across. So this first fantasy that this person will simply bring over all their contacts is often just that. There can also be contractual issues around client ownership and data, which people conveniently forget when they're excited about the idea. Now, the second issue is this. Even when people say, no, this person is genuinely a gun salesperson, what do they actually mean by that? Because very often they mean they saw one thing that looked impressive. I had this situation once where everybody was telling a client, you have to hire this salesperson, he's awesome. They were spoken about like they were a sure thing. And my team at Inject was asked to assess this candidate properly. When we did, the person was not recommended based on the behaviors actually needed in the job. Now, the people referring them were puzzled. So we asked a very simple question. What is it exactly that has you so convinced that this person is good? And when we unpacked it, it came down to one product presentation that had been well delivered. Now, let's be fair. Presenting well can matter in sales. In some jobs, it matters a lot. But sales is usually much more than presenting. There's prospecting, qualifying, there's building trust, there's uncovering needs, there's navigating through objections, there is asking for commitment. We need people to follow through. There's resilience, there's maintaining discipline when things go quiet. There is doing the boring but valuable activities that create pipeline. So if all someone has seen is this person can present a product nicely, that is not the same thing as knowing that they are genuinely a strong salesperson. Sometimes they're just very familiar with that product. They've been doing that presentation over and over for 10 years. They know the flow, they know the examples, they know the answers to the usual questions. That's not nothing, but it's also not the same as saying that they are broadly excellent in sales. If that specific product presentation is the central requirement of the role, fine. If the role is broader than that, and most sales roles are, then you need much more precision than, he seemed good. And this leads to the next trap. People will often say, I don't really care how they do it. If they were salesperson of the year at ABC Limited, then they hit target, that's enough for me. No, it's not. Because targets can be very misleading when you strip them away from context. Was that person in a true hunter role where they had to generate new business from scratch? Or were they more a farmer managing existing accounts and growing them over time? Were they a BDM who had to create opportunities out of thin air? Or were they effectively an account manager with some upside? Here's a common one. Did they inherit a great set of accounts that were grown by the previous person and they just didn't stuff it up too much? the warmest leads, the strongest support team, the most recognized brand in the market? Were they operating in a rising market where everybody was winning and going well? Did they land one unusually large deal that blew their number out of the water and then struggled the next year? Were they genuinely brilliant, or were they just standing in a favorable context? Why do I know this to be true? Because my team at Inject works on both sides. They're working with managers, advising and guiding on the performance of their team, and they're working on the hiring side. So when you have extensive exposure to what is actually happening versus what is presented, then the empirical evidence to prove the point is very strong. This is why it's puzzling when people throw around the target achievement as if it tells the whole story. It tells you something, but not nearly enough. Because a result without context can create false certainty, which leads to a decision that is convenient in the moment only. Here's another one for you. If someone is coming from a very successful competitor or a very well-known brand, were they good because they were genuinely great, or were people taking their meetings because of the badge on the shirt? That matters, because sometimes the meeting was easy to get because of the company name. Sometimes the salesperson didn't establish trust. It was already there because of the brand. The customer probably thought, well, yeah, I'm going to meet with someone from that company. Then that person moves to a lesser known business, and all of a sudden the same doors do not open so easily. The same status is not there, and now you finally get to see whether they can really sell. So again, I'm not saying don't hire experienced industry people, because there will be some who are excellent. I'm saying don't confuse familiarity, favorable context, and borrowed credibility with genuine transferable sales capability. Now, even though this person may not be right for you, because everyone else has the same idea, this person will be fielding multiple offers from the industry. And what will happen is this will give you this sense of urgency to move quickly and secure them. Because if other people want them, then they must be good, right? And if that becomes your only strategy, you put yourself in a weak position and become dependent on finding externally ready-made talent. You're more likely to overpay, and with that decision, it's hard to admit that you're wrong. Maybe they're okay, but if you have no repeatable system, you become more likely to tolerate any bad behavior because you're scared to lose them. And be prepared to hear every now and then, that's not how we did it at ABC Limited, which will drive you nuts. So if that's not what you should do, what should you do instead? Let's split the problem into two parts: recruitment and selection. Recruitment is about how you attract the right people into your opportunity. Selection is about how you work out who is actually right for you. And I want to start with selection, because until you know what right looks like, your recruitment approach will be vague. This is one of the biggest mistakes I see in sales hiring. People say they need a salesperson as if that is one generic thing, but it isn't. Sales roles differ massively from each other. Some roles are pure hunters. Their job is to create new from new opportunities. Blank page, cold start, no relationship, no pipeline, no easy path. Other roles are farmers. Their job is to grow existing accounts, deepen relationships, identify opportunities, retain trust, and expand value over time. Then there are hybrid roles, a bit of account management, a bit of business development. Sometimes a lot of existing relationship maintenance with a bit of prospecting bolted on and called new business. Sometimes the opposite. Roles can vary significantly. Some are highly transactional with high volume, whilst others are slower and more consultative and complex. They may demand strong negotiation or deep discovery and diagnosis. In some cases, credibility with senior stakeholders is critical, and in others, it's about relentless activity and pace or strong structure and follow-up. On occasion, the main person you need to sell to is not even the end customer, but a key influencing party. The focus might be product-heavy or relationship-driven. At times, the job is about educating the market. In others, it's about executing a disciplined process in a mature environment. These are not small differences. This is the job definition. So a key thing to do is define the role properly, not just the title and target. Define what success actually looks like in how the person performs the job. Start with a clear picture of a strong performer. What do they do each week? The key conversations they handle, the resistance they face, the type of customers they deal with, and the part of the sales cycle that matters the most. Ultimately, getting specific on the behaviors that separate success from mediocrity in that seat. Then analyze your existing team. Look at who is actually succeeding and why. Focus on what they're doing, not what you think they're doing, but what they're actually doing in practice. If there's no existing team, then you need to be that role model. It's like any function in a business. You need at least one senior person who knows how to do the job of any staff member that you have in your core operation that delivers value to your clients. If you cannot describe the transferable behaviors required in the role, then you're likely to hire based on convenience. And convenience in hiring often becomes pain later on. The aim is not to be seduced by general impressions, but to identify the specific observable behaviors that predict success in similar situations. So once you've defined the position, then we move to your approach with selection. You may have heard me say that people hire based off the resume and qualifications, yet fire based off attitude, aptitude, and behaviors. Sales is one of the clearest examples of this because the resume can look fantastic, big names, nice tenure, good titles, strong numbers, great language. Also be careful around the consistent 18 to 24 month tenure. Sometimes that's just how the market works, but often it can mean the same cycle has been repeating. They start well, they create a good impression. It takes a business a while to realize the substance is not really there. Pressure builds, and then they move on. Then the same thing happens somewhere else. Define the core behaviors and capabilities needed in the role, and in terms of assessing them, you need to use valid and reliable tools for assessment. If you want to know more about this in depth, please watch or listen to the Lead to Grow episode titled Why You Keep Hiring the Wrong Person and What to Do Differently. But for salespeople specifically, ask a behavioral question such as, tell me about one of your most successful sales experiences, or provide an example of when you prospected for business and saw it all the way through to closure that best presents how you go about sales. Or a similar question. The objective is to get a specific example using the CAR, so context, action, result, or STAR, situation, task, action, result method to learn what it is that they actually did. What you might find is that they tell you about achieving the biggest deal in their company's history. You need to not be impressed by that though, because what's more important is what they did to get it. In many cases, the biggest deal the company has ever had was a business who wanted to do business with that supplier anyway. And they may have just reached out themselves. The salesperson's job was to just not mess it up. Conversely, if you have someone talk through specifically what they did and how they did it, including the challenges along the way, then this is something that has an increased chance of being transferable into your position, assuming that's what you need. It's important to ask the right probing questions as well without leading them. This is simply asking more questions about what happened, such as what were some of the biggest challenges along the way. Particular areas that you will likely want to know about are the inflection points that result in success or failure. If they say something like, I just had to go into objection handling mode, or I found a way to get past the gatekeeper, then this is not enough. Ask, what was your approach to objection handling? What were the objections that you identified and how did you do that? Or with the gatekeeper one, say, what did you do to get past the gatekeeper? You see, the transferable behaviors are far more valuable to your business than one amazing win that happened mostly by luck. So this is key. On top of this, you should be using valid and reliable psychometric assessments to identify the raw cognitive ability. You know, things like being able to solve problems with incomplete information and to be able to pick up knowledge like your products and processes as well. Importantly, are their natural behaviors aligned to your role? Not their old role. If their natural energy is far too out of alignment with what you want them to do, you're going to be constantly chasing them. And this is not much fun for anyone. Now, once you've done all that, then let's look at the recruitment or candidate sourcing approach. Because now that we know what we're actually looking for, we can go there. And this is where I want to give you what I think is a far more sustainable answer. Build your own pipeline of sales talent. My team at Inject has implemented this across many workplaces and it works. It's not as fun, it's not as instant. It does require patience and discipline, which is exactly why many businesses won't do it. And I can give this to you now and most people won't. But if you can do it, it can change the quality and sustainability of your sales team substantially over time. So what does this mean in practice? It means identifying the feeder roles into sales. It means hiring people earlier in their journey for attitude, aptitude, and behaviors. It means looking for people who have the right raw ingredients, things like achievement orientation, resilience, communication ability, curiosity, coachability, the ability to build rapport with different people, willingness to learn, and the energy to do the hard yards. It means also developing them. not just throwing them into a sales seat and hoping, actually developing them, giving them a clear pathway, build a career development framework for them, and be explicit about what progression looks like. Define the skills, behaviors, and milestones required to move from one level to the next, and of course, create remuneration structures that reward progression and performance properly. Have proactive development plans, give them exposure, give them coaching, let them learn in those feeder roles where they can understand the product and the customer, deliver value, and learn about the commercial drivers and your way of doing things before getting that full quota of responsibility. Why does this work? Because instead of buying whatever the market throws at you, you're building your own context. They learn your standards, your language, your method, your expectations. It's your particular method of serving customers and your definition of what good looks like. And after a few years, if you maintain that discipline, you have this steady flow of talent. Now, is this the only approach? Of course not. You may still bring in external people at a more senior level. You may still hire experience when it makes sense. But the difference is that external hiring is not your only game plan. It becomes one lever, not your only lever. And this approach is especially important in two situations. The first, if you want to deliver a premium service. The second is when you're trying to challenge the status quo in your industry. If your strategy is to do things differently, then bringing in people who are deeply attached to how we did it at ABC Limited can be more of a drag than a help. You want people who can learn, adapt, and build the new way with you, not just protect the old way because it feels familiar. So when people say, can't I just get this salesperson? My answer is this. They're really asking two different questions. One is, do I feel an urgent need to solve this problem right now? And two is this particular person actually the right answer? Those are not the same question. What often happens is that short-term urgency manufactures certainty in our minds. We've got targets, we need growth, we feel behind, we feel exposed. So we tell ourselves that getting someone quickly is the answer. Just get me a warm body. Let's just get someone in the seat. At least there is someone doing the work. And that kind of thinking often creates a cycle because then you hire quickly. The fit is not quite right. 6 months later, you're frustrated. 18 months later, the person is gone and underperforming. Then the same panic hits again. And what looked like action was really just pain relief, not strategy, just relieving temporary pain. So this is what I'll leave you with. The best time to start building your internal pipeline of sales talent was 5 years ago. The second best time is today. So before you urgently fill a seat with someone who looks like they could do the job, who kind of sounds polished, who comes recommended by someone in the industry, ask yourself this. Am I being unkind to my future self right now? Will future me in 3 years or 5 years look back on this moment and go, oh, damn, I should have started building a proper sales talent pipeline back then, instead of hoping the market was going to save me. Leadership doesn't grow by accident. It grows because you choose to work on it. The same goes for building a high-performing sales team. Thanks for making the time today. I'm Tommy Sim, and this is Lead to Grow. If you found this episode helpful, feel free to share it with someone who might also get value from it. If you're watching on YouTube, you can like the video and subscribe to the channel to see future episodes. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can follow the show. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, a 5-star rating or short review really helps more people discover it. New episodes come out regularly. Hope to see you again.